today, something special. Dr. John Cunniff, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for bringing me on.
JC.
Yeah.
So I think I was the one who started calling you JC.
JC the second.
The second, because like JC the first, you exude. Okay, I got to tell people who you are because they're like, wondering. You're a hospital physician. You are roughly 10 years my senior. You are the one who convinced me. I left medicine in 2002 after graduating Stanford. We trained together, but you were a couple of years ahead of me. Yes. I left entirely. I worked in tech. I was so burned out. And you called me one day. And what did you tell me?
What did I say? That's a good question. I remember where I was when I was talking to you. It was D. Ground. I was on the phone.
Stanford D. Ground.
Yeah, we were a little desperate for a hospitalist. One of our hospitalists, and it's a funny thing, we were in a meeting and we're talking about how short we are. And I don't know if you know this, you look over and somebody's wearing those anti-throw up things.
Oh, yeah.
When they're pregnant.
Those little pressure.
You know, and you're like, okay.
Uh-oh, we're about to be even more short-staffed.
You know,
right.
So it's one of those, like, you know, you pick up little subtle things and you're like, why is she wearing the emesis pregnancy?
Oh, no.
And I called you right away.
You did. And I got the call and I go, John Cunniff. He was the nicest guy, always had a white cloud. Like always in residency was the guy who like, it didn't matter what was happening. He had a smile on his face and he had something wise to say about it. And I was like, well, all right, I'll hear him out, even though I'm really skeptical. And you were working in this group at Stanford. And I said, hospital medicine, that's like the worst. That's like being a resident 24/7. And you told me something at the time. You said, this is the best job on the planet. Like you get to do this, you get to do that. You have residents, you get to teach. The patients are grateful. You get to wear a shirt and a tie and you get to be Stanford faculty. And you painted this picture and I was like, all right, I'll try it for a month. 10 years later.
you even became assistant dean or something.
I did.
Right?
I became deputy chief of medicine at Stanford.
And we're so proud of that.
On your, you should run for this thing. We'll vote for you. Next thing I know, I have to do it. I have to go to these meetings. I'm like, this is terrible. I'll never forgive John.
You could wear a little thing of badge, deputy chief.
The artist formerly known as the deputy chief of medicine at Stanford. But so
you could arrest people at Stanford Hospital. I think you had that ability.
I believe I had the ability to commit a physician arrest.
Let's throw somebody out. You're out of here.
It's better than the cardiac arrest we were typically seeing. But yeah, what was interesting is you were right about the job. When I took it, first of all, you were, I have to say this, and I don't think I've told you this, but you were my mentor. And I think you've mentored a lot of people. I know you're very uncomfortable with this.
I didn't know that. I would have tightened things up a lot if I known I had any influence on anybody.
And now look, now I'm like, Joe, get canceled any chance I get on social media. So you're responsible for that.
I'm sorry to hear about that.
But as a mentor, when I say mentor, you were a model of how attitude and perspective can change your experience in medicine. Not just for yourself and your colleagues, but for the patients you're taking care of. So you gave me a few pieces of advice. I remember you said, first of all, and remember, you had gray hair when you were like 10 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
So you always had the distinguished kind of look.
I'm not old. I've had a hard life. It's a very different scenario. But yeah.
You mean you grew up in Florida?
What I do say is I'm lucky, right? Because I'm in the last profession where being old's a positive. It really is.
Yeah,
like it's true. The last time everybody's like, if only some old guy would show up.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't there's a lot of scenarios where in tech, like that doesn't finally, the old guy shows up.
Exactly. That's true.
So you got to take the advantage where you get.
That's true. And so our patient population was a rather demanding population. They really wanted expertise and they wanted seniority and so on. And so you had that with the hair, but you also dressed the part. And what you told me was, listen, don't do what you see these residents doing where you show up in scrubs and you do this and that. He's like, you have to look like a doctor and you're a new attending physician. And so wear a shirt, wear a tie, go to Ross. You can get them at a bargain deal because you're the cheapest dude I know on the planet apart from myself. It's almost like you had Indian parents.
I have been accused of being cheap.
Yes.
So yes.
Yeah, frugal, efficient. And so I did all that and I found, oh my gosh, it works. And you were like, let's go to the faculty club at Stanford. Let's take all the trappings of this and let's make ourselves feel the part. And then you will be the part. And it worked. And I started to really enjoy the fact that we had a relatively low patient volume and we could spend time with our patients, and this idea of this professional, this relationship with the patient.
That hits a lot of things because basically it's the greatest job, but your job is to become their friend, part of their family, an important person to them quickly. Right, very quickly.
In hospital medicine, for sure.
In hospital medicine,
you have hours.
You don't have a life, years with them. So in 10, 15 minutes, they have to trust you and they have to work at things together with you and feel comfortable. And so that's why dressing the part, doing all these other things that don't get you off on the wrong foot and then have to recover from them. So that's what I was doing. I had no idea I was mentoring. I was trying to make my life easier, and you accidentally heard things I may have mumbled to myself. So if it was used to you, thank goodness.
This is the magic of John Cunniff, JC. It's all self-interested brilliance, because by making those around you happy, effective, and engaged, your own life becomes easier.
I didn't even think about it.
And and this is why I say, like, when we talk about like spiritual awakening or meditation or these kind of woo-woo things, it's really not about you. It's about everyone around you is going to benefit from that, which in turn is going to feed back to your own life, But so, it's really interesting, that idea of having a very short period to create a relationship. We had the advantage of being part of an organization where the doctors, the primary care docs, the specialists were all in the same org, and they had hired us to take care of their patients in the hospital. And I always saw that at the time as it was like a sacred trust. They're saying, here's our patients. We're no longer going to the hospital. And many people saw that as a downside.
Yeah, that was a big cut, big
cut,
deal. Yeah.
Because my primary doesn't see me in the hospital. But so what you would do, and you taught me to do, is you'd go in, you'd give them your card that had the name of the organization. You said, I'm working with Dr. Such and so, which is their doctor. I'm in cahoots with them. I'm talking to them. I'm here to keep you safe in the hospital and shepherd you through and make sure that they know what's up. And they told me this about you. And it was brilliant.
It's the same pitch 22 years later.
I love it.
Except now I add my cell phone.
Oh, you give them your cell phone.
Doximity number. But,
the doximity, so you're shielded a little bit, but it's still, they can get you. Yeah.
I mean, but again, and part of it is like your own experience in healthcare and people complaining of like, what was the worst thing? And the worst thing is when you have somebody in the hospital and you can't get through to the doctor.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the silliest thing in the world. We all have cell phones. Like the patient has a cell phone, I have a cell phone, nurse has a cell phone, son has a cell phone. And they're like, we can't get hold of you.
Right.
You're like,
this is rampant.
Come on. No. So every single patient I have now gets my cell phone number written on the back, but a lot of times my handwriting's not good.
So then they're calling. There's some old lady in San Jose who's getting
hacked off. But because like if they want to talk to me, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Examples, like they'll be like, I was waiting here 4 hours for you. You're like, I've been in the hospital the whole time.
Yeah.
5 West or 3 West, it doesn't matter. I come right away. So I always tell them a couple things. One, we can't have anything go wrong because of communication problem, right? So the nurses know how to get hold of me. Everybody knows how to call me. But if you feel like something's not right because of communication, just call me.
Right.
And then the nice thing about being in the hospital is you can use the same lines every single time. Because it's all new. So
sounds like doing social media.
I'm an optimist. If I don't hear anything's wrong, I assume it's all fine. Okay. So if there's a problem, and that's why I always try and educate, like what's exactly going to happen, what's coming your way. And then if it goes off, if they don't get the antibiotic, they're like, hey, well, what's going on? Because the patient's always your last line of, I don't use defense, but the last line of something getting saved before something goes wrong.
So once again, the self-interest is tied into this compassion because by giving them access, they're going to be the ones who tell you when something is not right.
Let me assure you, you want them to call you before it goes to the primary care doctor, the specialist, five people.
Or the patient representative
The patient representative at Stanford with the suit.
Right.
Comes
They're
walking.
always wearing a suit.
Like it's just easier, like just call me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the times it's not my fault. Some of the times it is, because you send it to the wrong, you send the meds to the wrong pharmacy, right?
Yeah.
No big deal. But if the pharmacy closed and they can't get it, it's an important med, that can escalate.
And that's a bounce back too. That's a readmission. That's a failure of care.
Everything going
Right.
But like if a cell phone call to me, because I'm one of those people that just has to clear all the texts and like I can't let anything go.
Right.
I'm twitchy.
We're that way. Type A's.
I'm just twitchy. So
I'm a type A minus.
Yeah. You may get a couple more texts than I do. Like, I'm still waiting on my texts. But yeah, no, but again, and that's why it's great to talk to you because like I only do these things in my own mind. Like I wish there was like, you invited me on the show 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's my fault. So I didn't follow up. So
well,
it's
you
been
have
a while.
a job and there was a thing called COVID that happened.
But you said like hospital hacks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it were just things to make things go smoother.
Right.
Or like when you've seen things go wrong and you're like, okay, let's make sure that never happens again.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so a couple things I do, I always give the card and I always mention the primary care doctor. Like I'm with so-and-so.
That's right.
And that's that, connection.
That's right.
And then now I do because it's COVID, you're never going to see my face, right? And then I give them this with my picture.
With your picture on it, yeah.
And then if I'm ever handing off, I go.
The whole team is here.
I go, there's a team of doctors who are going to take care of you. It's these two, they'll be here tomorrow. Because again, what people say is
team.
They don't want to show up and not who's in charge. You know, who's in charge? You got that. And there's like, well, everybody knows it's the guy with the X bike. Like, okay. Now you can still be mad, but you can never say John Cunniff's not in charge,
right.
Because that's what you do it.
The group has gotten so big, John.
Yes.
It's two sides of this. It used to be one side.
It used to be one side.
Oh, this is great. So, okay, but quick question now. So let's back up. I know a lot of young docs and older docs are going to say, but you give them the card and the cell phone, you give them all this information. Aren't those patients or their patient's family going to hound you? Isn't it becoming then a lifestyle impact for you where you can't do your job?
No.
Why?
Once I leave, so here's the thing. I'm responsible from, because they always, what's a hospitalist? I'm the guy the ER doctor calls to come down and take care of you if you're coming in the hospital. And I'm in charge of, and I manage everything, don't do everything till you leave the hospital, but really till you get plugged back into your primary care doctor, right? Because there's always like the 2-3 days where there's a little bit of something jiggling.
Right.
And so now after I discharge them, I always call the patient in the morning.
Wow.
It takes 10 seconds.
Right.
You're like, and you'd be surprised. Like, these things are going great and they're fine. Yeah. But if they're not and something didn't get sent somewhere, something fell through the cracks, something changed, you can just pick it up. You'd be surprised what you can catch at 9 a.m. on a Friday versus, 7 p.m. Monday when they come dragging back
into the ER. Yeah. No, it's true. And I actually used to do that as well.
So it's just an easy touch.
Yeah.
But
and I'll say, when we were running our clinic in Las Vegas, it was a high touch clinic. Everyone had the cell phones. You could contact the doctor anytime. You almost never got a ton of calls because you were developing the relationship already. You spent the time in the care and the follow-up, you would do those crucial things so that things wouldn't fall through the cracks.
And it's even different for us because I work at a great medical group, Palo Alto Foundation Medical Group, great primary care doctors, really care about it, great systems. So I'm just there in that from, really it's that Friday till Monday or that, because once then they'd rather work my health online, they don't need me anymore.
Right.
So there's never that feeling like, they forget about me quite quickly, which is fine, and people say, well, you don't get continuity of care, but I do readmit a lot of the same people. I have a lot of good friends that I've admitted over the years. And one of the toughest things are if they pass away, you don't get notified. Like a primary care doctor always would. Because, I had friends, real good, I just wind up admitting them every 6 months for 10 years, and you'd know them. And I try and save them because it's HIPAA, you can save them in the EMR, but you always try and but you don't always hear. And then maybe you'll hear, but maybe you won't.
I had those experiences too. And I would find out, what was nice is when you develop relationship with that patient as a hospitalist. In other words, they're it becomes like, they are like almost like family. And when they get readmitted, you're the first to want to take them off another team who has them. And
that's sometimes they'll text you.
They'll text you. Yeah.
And they'll be like, we saved your card. It's in my wallet. You're like, really?
The way they would get me is I would always give them the Palo Alto operator's number. And I'd say, you call them and you say, I need to speak to Dr. Damani. He said I could call him. And they would always do that. But then the primary would know and they would let me know. and then I would know that the
And
patient.
so this is also about
relationship
tricks or whatever.
Yeah.
So the other thing I do now, I don't know if you know, because I'm older, when I get a patient, I go to the old notes and click in me and see if I've ever admitted them.
Oh,
Because if I admitted them 15 years ago, I'm not going to remember.
Right.
But if I did, then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember you from 15 years ago.
And that's that's a connection for the patients. Right?
Well, and you can just get that. And then the reality is once you read it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember them. But a lot of times when you're walking to the room,
you don't know.
Like, it's a little.
It's the story
cool.
that always triggers, isn't it?
And there's something.
Story.
There's something
there.
And then you're like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
But I do now always see if I've admitted someone before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's running start type things.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. And again, I think it's almost a good like theme for the whole episode is like these little hacks. They're more than hacks. They're just like almost common sense things that in medicine have been beaten out of us. Like, oh, you don't do that. You don't do that.
They're like relationship accelerators.
That's it.
Because they're going to like you.
Yeah.
Eventually you're going to get along. But you don't want that to be day 3.
Right.
You want it to be day 1. You know what I mean? Like you want to be working closely, maybe not day 1, but as soon as possible. And like you want them to trust you.
And why does that matter? Partially because they're going to get better faster if their catecholamines are lower, if they feel like they trust who's taking care of them, if they're not worried that something's been missed, if they have access to you by communication. And I know this because, I mean, when family gets sick.
Now, you do realize it's just because they'll give me less problems, I can get everything done. Sorry.
I just want to circle it back to the pure self-interested
It really was interesting to see you go very out there. And I was like, wow, that wasn't at all. That never even crossed my mind.
And this was another thing you mentored me in is like pure selfishness is actually the most compassionate thing you can do.
So one thing I always do is, okay, the nurses here on L7 are the best nurses in the whole hospital. C3, B2. You just start every expectation up.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody's like, well, that's so lucky. I'm here with the best nurses on L7.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then every time anybody get mentioned, any, consultant, they're the best.
Yeah.
They're really good. And then everything, because everybody's got a higher expectation, doing better and working together, you get better outcomes.
You get better outcomes.
Things aren't you didn't spend 20 minutes of your time talking about something that wasn't important. Then you're like, oh yeah, that potassium 3-1, I probably should have replaced. Now that I look at it, just diagnosed scurvy.
A real scurvy in the hospital. What was the?
I can't talk about it.
HIPAA. Scurvy, but I think you violated HIPAA just by mentioning scurvy, since there's one case in the universe. Salmonella too.
One day,
boy, you really do have the best job.
Berry.
Oh, dude, wet berry or dry berry?
One of both. Yeah. But that's the other thing is like my job is I just go walk around and talk to people.
That's what I loved about it.
And I think the reason I do these things, and we started off, I was going to talk about the chair.
Right, which we will. Yeah.
The midget stool. But it's all about making it a more fun job because when people like you and you get, because what I want to do is hear their story, right? Like you always want to, like I have a patient right now, he designed the first geodesic tent.
Wow.
How cool is that?
It's like Buckminster Fuller, man.
How is that? Yeah. You know what I mean? You're like,
I once took care of a guy who designed like the batteries for the Apple phones back in the
And around here, you're like, oh, remember TVs used to be the yellow would be green, and now they're yellow. That's me. You're like,
it's crazy. Yeah. It's really
but everybody's got a story.
But what's interesting? I want to go back to something that you said, which was setting this expectation of positivity. It's an attitudinal shift where you're setting it for the patients. You're not going in going, okay, I just got to tell you, like the nurses on this floor are notoriously dangerous. What's the difference between a bullet and a nurse on this floor? A bullet only kills one person at a time. Like you don't go talking like that. That's how they used to talk at the VA, I remember. By the way, it's the end of Nurses Week, so.
I know. I was going to tell you it's Nurses Week.
I already know. I put out quite a few videos. By the way, it was a little distance from the hospital that allowed me to deeply appreciate what the nurses did even more because you see the amount of suffering they go through to get through their day and you just go, geez.
Well, you remember you and I walk away.
Yeah.
And we just get up and walk away to the cafeteria.
That's right. They're there.
And they
with 5, 6, 8 other patients.
Well, it is also where I try to get because you and I never got a feedback.
Right.
On our job.
That's right.
Could you imagine doing a job 22 years and get no feedback?
Yeah.
So the only feedback we get is from nurses who get to see how your interaction went after you walked away. But they're never going to tell you if you screwed it up. They're only going to tell you if you did. It's like, having a parent who's only going to help you if it's positive. But they won't tell you if it's negative. But they'll say, oh, that really went well. They liked you.
That's right.
But you only hear that from them because they get to listen into the conversation after you walk out.
I never thought of that, but that's absolutely true. In fact,
I'll always be here for
one
you.
of my difficulties in being in the hospitalist role, one of the things that I noticed in retrospect is I never knew if I was doing a good job because the patients get discharged and if they don't come back, that's a success. But the nurses would tell me things, and not only that, but also the nurses would save your ass. So, they knew stuff about those patients that it would take you forever to figure out because you're not there.
Well, they're listening in.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, la, la, la. And they're like, oh, by the way, they're not going to.
And this was more so in the days when they weren't so attached to the computer charting all the time.
Yeah.
And we've really devalued the nursing profession, and then we wonder why we can't fill the spots and that they're going on strike and there's travelers are so expensive and so on. But so this idea of setting this attitudinal shift affects everybody around you. I started the whole show by saying, oh yeah, John was always the white cloud. So what does that mean for people who aren't in medicine, right?
Oh, okay. So this is a little bit of magical thinking.
Yes.
And it's the idea that certain people, if they're on call, will have more admissions, they'll have sicker admissions, people on the floor will code, or bad things will happen.
Yeah.
Not their fault.
Basically everything they touches turns to stool.
It's not their fault, right? It's never their fault. It's just bad luck, exogenous.
Right. That's right.
And then the white cloud is, the quote unquote no-hitter, no admissions, everybody fine.
Yep.
Life's easy.
Best luck in the world.
So that's never really believed in the white cloud, black cloud. But,
So what they did some study on this, and I think what it found is it was an attitudinal thing. Okay. So when I dub you the white cloud, you can look at it from a magical lens and go, he's just lucky in this and that. But it's not that. You had terrible calls. You had shifts with tons of patients. You had the sickest patients in the world. It's the attitude you bring. I'm working with the best nurses right now on B2. All the consultants are great.
I had nothing to do with not answering my pager near the end of the call.
Where it accidentally.
If only you had called me. Gosh, 45 minutes earlier. But sorry,
ran out of batteries.
That was an inside joke. That was a very inside joke. And the idea is you have to take the admission till some certain hour.
That's right. And then
so if you're not answering the admission at 9:45, well, everybody's a little hacked off.
Oh, those 9:45 calls from the ER, those were a joy. You're right. You're there like, I might get some sleep tonight. It's been really good. And then, but it does frame, it actually is a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways because, again, everybody just elevates the game a little bit around the white clouds. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it is. I think some of it's inborn personality, some of it's trained, some of it's learning. But one thing you taught me was like, try to be, and you never said this, but it was like being a white cloud is not necessarily something that's bestowed upon you from high.
You picked this date as join, so you got that call schedule.
Exactly right.
Like astrology for the next 5 years.
It's how you see the world. It's your attitude. So back to you.
So again, easiest job. Well, put it this way. I don't want to say easiest. I couldn't imagine having another job.
Right.
Because it's most interesting, right? Because it's like you get to walk in, meet these amazing people at a very intense time of their lives.
Right.
And be part of like everything.
That's what I loved about it.
But you also get to keep thinking. There's an intellectual side of it. There's an emotional side. Like if you take anything, your need to be needed, which most of us have.
Right.
If you're in the,
if you're a normal non-psychopath.
Well, no, I mean, if you went into medicine, like there's some weird need to like, some might be useful, maybe.
Right. There are some colleagues of ours that I'm not sure.
No, but I mean, I'm like in that weird. Know. So, and it's I'm trying not. I used to do all kinds of things, because you can be like, oh, you need an Uber, take an Uber, or you drive to people's house.
I've driven people home. Yeah.
Yeah. Just last time I went to the guy's house and he was ordering guns over the internet. And I was like, that was probably not the best. I was like, maybe I should.
Do I need to report this?
Oh no,
I'm not supposed to be here.
That went south so bad. I can't talk about that one. But you know how like you get pretty cavalier, and then you're like,
then something happens, right? And then the risk management people are involved. Yeah.
Well, no, maybe I'm dead.
Death. See, I consider that a positive outcome. Some calls, you're like, death. This may be a good thing.
And the other thing is, maybe this gets to that, is always making sure you're in the right attitude when you. So how you all meet people, and then again, some people listen here in medicine, right?
Right.
I worked all shift and I didn't eat anything. Okay, as a hospitalist,
Yeah.
they're
Nurses
just
too.
sitting.
Yeah.
Like you go eat, they're still going to be sitting. Like
Yeah.
you can't have a crummy attitude because you didn't go eat. Right.
Right. Right.
Like nobody will care. Like,
Right. Right.
And I told you last night, it was 12:30.
Yeah. You were on last night.
I had 3 more notes to write
Mm.
and I went out and ran.
You ran. Wait, in the middle of the night.
12:30 p.m.
Aha.
12:30 a.m. Sorry, the other way. I still had 3 notes to write. And if I didn't go do that 20 minutes running, I'd be so irritable right now. I'd be
Wow.
like, I can't, but I have, like I know enough about myself. I can't practice medicine. I can't talk to my wife. Like there's a lot of things unless I've exercised.
Right.
Because if I don't,
I'm actually in the same boat.
then I'm
getting very irritable. Yeah.
But it's fine. My wife will go, just go running.
Yeah.
I'll be, no, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
No. Before you say one more thing, just go running. And just come back.
And it's always right.
Hold that thought. And then,
and the thought's
but it
gone.
is, I do realize and have you ever, like, I get mad at a patient every couple of years.
Yeah. Really mad every couple of years.
Something, and it's always when I haven't exercised.
I'm
I'm vulnerable because usually if I've exercised and I'm in a good space, it is almost impossible to get me mad.
You know what's funny? I remember this thing now. So we sign out to each other as colleagues. So this is another like intercollegial thing. And there are these voicemails that we leave each other. And sometimes a voicemail, it's almost like an email. You can kind of be a little abrupt occasionally if something's wrong. And I remember something had happened. You had signed out somebody to me. I'd signed out someone to you. And I left you a voicemail that was uncharacteristically irritable of me. And you left a voicemail back for me. And it was something to the effect of, go out, take a walk, like do some things, you'll feel better,
Yeah.
It was, you never made it about you. It was always about, clearly there's a click that needs to click and you'll feel better.
Well, you're good enough with people, right? That the idea anybody would get you mad, because if you get mad in medicine, you've lost, right?
Yeah,
like you're
already
unprofessional,
behind.
you're
Yeah.
silly. Like
Yeah.
there's no reason because you control everything. Like
that's true.
You have every lever in the world.
That's
right?
true. People don't feel like it, but they do.
You have every.
Yeah.
You
have all the
total
power.
like the nurses are backing you.
Yeah.
The staff are backing you. You have all the prestige of blah blah whatever you're wearing on your jacket.
Right.
Come on, let them scream at you for a little bit. It's like and I mean it's hard. You didn't sit through 8 hours of the ER.
Right.
You didn't have people forget to feed you or not bring your meds.
Right.
You just
having the worst day of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, and something bad happened. And not, come on. Like, there's no way. But like, so if you ever find yourself, you're like, okay, that's,
take a breath. Yeah.
It's you, you got to figure out how to.
I think it's a good idea. It's always you. You always have that.
It always is.
It always is you. Yeah.
Not always. Not always.
I was going to say, there's always an exception to that. There's always an exception to that.
There's some that are
so
like.
Every 2 years you get mad at a patient.
I raise my voice.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, I never get,
Yeah.
I've
gotten mad. Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you'll hear it in my tone.
Yeah.
And people aren't used to that. Right?
Yeah. So they get.
And then they stop.
Yeah.
And it's my fault. It's silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if it gets too abrupt, sometimes you do it on purpose just to stop being a human punch.
Right.
But that's under control. That's different.
Right.
That's different.
I found it was often with borderline patients, they really knew how to push. They'd know how to do it. Okay. And when I was younger in my career, it would really affect me because I take it personally. And because we're a little bit insecure, have a little imposter syndrome, there's a little bit of that, or maybe a lot of that. You go in and you're on defense. And I remember just yelling at this patient and then immediately and storming off with the resident who was modeling. Oh. And the resident was thrilled because the resident was like, that person just has earned that for a week. And I went out and I said, okay, what I just did was absolutely reprehensible. Yeah. You never do that. And it's about me. And here's why. And then I marched right back in and apologized to the patient and said, I would completely understand if you even want another doctor, but I'm here to take care of you. I lost my temper because I made it about me. I'm sorry. And the patient was absolutely cool after that.
Which they won.
Yeah. Suddenly we're like, all right. But
But it was, you can be tired and you can not, you can come in your office because sometimes you can't hit everything perfect. But it is, as we all go back and look and think of those, like, it's once every couple years. You know, you're like, well, yeah, it wasn't a good look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you think it can't happen to you, think again.
Think again.
Right? Because some people always can get, so there's some
you can
pros
push
out
people.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the other things I always do. I'll circle around with the nurses and go, look, this is maybe like a mental health issue.
Right.
This is like so extreme. And just recently I had a patient.
Yeah.
And I go, look, we can't get mad at her because, and then, you call the family and they're like, we apologize. Like, we are so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, at the end, she left and I had everyone, she said, you've answered every one of my questions.
Oh, it's amazing.
And it was like, it was probably the only time in her life she had ever had a good interaction, like had finally gotten to good. But like, it's important to circle with the nurses and we go, okay, we all know this is mental health. We all know this is going to happen. We're not going to, we're not going to split. We're not going to let, we're not going to go after each other or let the,
because that happens.
And we're going to be coherent, but this is going to keep happening. So it's okay.
To dive back into the split, because this is an important thing. There are a lot, and remember, these patients have had trauma. They've had all kinds of things that you would just have an outpouring of compassion if you actually knew what they'd been through, if you were molecule for molecule them. So splitting is where that patient tries to pit different members of the team against each other. Yeah. And it often is very effective.
And it's often doctors versus nurses.
Usually.
That's the easiest
thing.
Sometimes
the nurse said this, the doctor
consultant
said
versus whatever.
Yep, that happens too.
But if they're bored, they'll start. Doctor, right here. Let's just do this right
The
here.
eternal.
Let's not make it complicated.
What the next thing is.
And I want to point out remember how we said, I have a couple tricks. I have things I do to make things go smoother, right? Well, I don't know what everybody else has. And kind of what I'm interested, because I'm always self-interested, what everybody else does. But I will tell you some of the things I always do. And so one thing is, I kind of have an idea culturally, which is always a little risky. So I know how to sing Happy Birthday in Cantonese. And I did it to the lady I just admitted. Because everyone should know, Chunky Sanya, Phala, Chunky Sanya. And when they look at you, because you go, where are you from? They go, China. And you're like, okay, but from Chongqing or Beijing? Because I've been to Chongqing, Beijing, Shanghai, Suzhou, Nanchang, where? And Guangzhou, which is, you got to know that's like saying you're from the U.S. versus Mexico. It's a totally different culture.
Right.
And then you go, well, what's your birthday? One time, it wasn't her patient, her husband, it was his birthday. So I got to actually sing it to him. But it's, I don't know, do you speak Hindi at all?
I don't, but I understand a little bit of Gujarati.
So what you do is you always say aram karo, which means be at peace.
Yes.
And there's always, every culture has one thing you can say, or, and since you can do it over and over again, you only need a couple.
Yeah. So having that little tool belt.
Just something in Russian, paka, means goodbye.
Right.
And
Balit.
No.
Balit.
Dar.
What's that?
Dar.
I forget that one.
It's pain in Persian.
Oh, in Persian,
Come
right.
on, man.
Right. And I am Persian. Is it Farsi that there's?
Yeah, Farsi.
Yeah, okay.
Farsi.
Yeah.
But it's, and also, what's the Afghani Farsi? Dari.
Dari, yeah.
Dari.
Back on the East Bay, a huge Afghani population. Yeah.
But you just pick up the culture as it goes by.
Right.
And you have something. You have some comment about the sports team, or you have to learn the sports team. You may have no interest, but you have to connect somehow.
Right.
So, and you're always looking for something.
So that's the relational toolkit that you develop.
Because you always, and you can tell the same jokes.
That's true.
Okay.
I did do that.
So here's the joke I always use, right? So I just throw this out. So anytime you're sitting there and they come up to start an IV or draw blood, what do you say?
I don't know.
I pass out at the sight of blood. I got to go now. And you just say it real deadpan. And they look at you like, and you say it I say it, I don't even, it's not even in my brain.
It's instinctive.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I used to do is anytime my pager would go off and I was in a patient's room, I would immediately do the robot.
See, you have the ability to pull dance moves out. Now, not all of us can do that. So yes, I do actually. I think I have a vague idea of you doing the robot.
It was instinctual. It just had to happen. Yeah.
No. And here's the other one. If you ever see a patient in the hallway and you go, okay, now you're going down to ultrasound, make sure they use the elevator this time. And and they just look at you, and they wheel away, and then they start laughing, But you're trying to quickly make connections, but sometimes you can overdo it.
Yeah.
So that's why you always do it. You never tell a new joke. So this is a rule I would tell everybody in the hospital. Never tell a new joke.
Don't try out new material.
You should already have done it 20 or 30 times.
So that you know the area under the curve of success is 100%. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Or at least it's not offending anyone.
Okay. Here's one. This is one that'll change depending on, and I've taken this one out. So if you say to, white people, black people in this country, if you didn't have bad luck, you'd have no luck at all, right? They're all like, you're right. You're right, right? But if you say that to Indians or Asians, they're like, maybe you just said I was born with no luck.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Like maybe that's a big deal.
Right.
And I didn't, and all of a sudden I did that one time and I was like, that one is totally out of my.
I'm not doing that again.
I'm not doing that one.
And
again.
you know what I love is there's some edit points in this video for people who don't know, because John is actually still taking calls from the hospital and just kind of helping out. So, some of this success of a sustainable career is the work-life integration of being able to do things without the sense of control that you need to, be everywhere at once all the time.
We're a team.
Yeah, it's a team. That's why you have a team.
I have a team.
You have the tools, the technology, the resources, the team.
I work with the best nurses.
And the trust of the organization that's hired you.
And that is, because you do have to know when you have to go.
Right.
And sometimes you'll be like, I've got to be there right now in person. And
That's
you got to know when that is.
Yeah.
And sometimes
that's
you're like,
an art.
This is all going to be managed fine without me.
That's right. And in fact, me being there might make it worse.
Yeah. But there's sometimes you're just, and when it is. And then you have to, like, under all circumstances, go.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't have to be there, like nobody's expecting you. Sometimes you just go.
It's better to be there. Yeah.
Because, sometimes things don't go well.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when physicians are patients. Oh, look at you, man. You're blowing up.
No, I just,
I still got a pager in addition.
Oh, so you don't even understand this.
Tell me.
I'm going to show it to you. So you got to understand, Zubin's been out of the biz a little bit.
Oh.
So he doesn't know the texting issues.
This is
automatic paging for sepsis that will just run.
Auto severe sepsis.
Yeah. So this comes out of EMR, Epic. Nobody did this.
Because it's an algorithm saying, well, we know these things with sepsis, so we need to notify.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I don't think it's ever been helpful to me.
Well, it's like alert fatigue, right?
Yeah. It's like the interaction with
That's right, with the Tylenol and Vaseline apparently interact.
Click. And then you're like, whoa, wait a second.
Right.
Every now and then you read them and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. I know. Oh my God. I almost killed this person by giving them Vaseline and a Band-Aid at the same time. Who knew that there's this rare interaction?
Took a couple down.
Exactly. But so that gets to the tools, right? The technology. If the technology is set up to please some master that doesn't really deal with patients, then
I'm a big fan of the pager.
Of the pager.
Yeah, still use
I
the
actually kept my pager still. I still use the pager.
It's best when you're exercising.
I like it.
Yeah,
people think I'm a drug dealer still.
Yeah.
Even though nobody does that anymore.
They don't even, most young people who buy drugs don't know drug dealers used to have pagers.
I know, right?
So you missed a whole generation.
I know. It was the rap lingo at the time. My Scott pager! Like everyone was talking about having their pager because they were slanging dope. So I felt like a thug in 1997 when I had my pager.
I did have a friend who was like, she was from South Africa. Boys, come here. This is a pager. My father used to sell them. Says, look. Like, gather around, child.
That's right.
My astrolabe.
We used to call them prawns. they're like aliens.
Look.
That's awesome.
And that was
God. We are really. We were in the early days of hospital medicine. Yeah.
And the one thing I want to talk about is my chair.
Yeah. So tell me about this chair, because this is what you told me about on the phone, and I'm like, you need to come on the show and tell us about this, because this is about that connection again.
So again, and there actually is a little data on perception where they'll almost do it a 2 for 1, 1 for 2. So if you're in the room and sitting down, you kind of get double credit time there.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
You're there 5 minutes, they'll say, he was 10, 15.
Yeah.
And if you're standing, it'll go the other way.
That's
if
right.
it's 20, they'll say 10.
He hardly talked to me. He made a U-turn at the bed.
But what you don't realize until you've done it is, well, for one thing, in a hospital, you can never find a chair. right? Like you ain't sitting on somebody's bed. If there is a chair, you're dragging it.
Right.
But what you do is then you get to strategically sit.
Aha.
So if you've ever walked into a room and there's like 5 people, like a judge and jury. Right?
Yes.
So you take your little chair, walk to the right side of the patient and sit
Aha.
and talk. And now the judge and jury's over there.
Right.
And you're here.
With the patient.
With the patient.
Allied with them. Yeah.
So if whatever we agree, now it's us. What do you guys think?
Right.
But when you're standing at the foot of the bed and everybody's sitting like that, you have to convince, if any one person disagrees, you got to convince everybody.
Dude.
You know? And so you the other thing I've noted, because I've been using a chair. Bill Cheng, the original chair guy.
Yes.
Stool.
Our colleague was head of the group for a long time.
And I just saw him today.
Harvard guy.
Karen.
He started with the chair, didn't he?
So the other thing is, when you're standing, if you say something the patient doesn't agree with, they know if you get to the door, by the time they say no, they've agreed to it. So they have to right away say no. But if they're sitting, they're like, okay, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I can think about it. So you don't get well, I think you got to leave today, or let's go to no, because it's like, okay, it's more a conversation.
Right.
Than I'm being told it.
Yeah.
And I think there is a time, because if you don't say no, that doctor may never come back.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
So the last thing you might have said is no. And then you convince me to yes. You start noticing it.
Yeah. So it's a real thing. Yeah.
And what I'll do is every single time I go back, I sit down, even though if it's just like 30 seconds, because if I don't know this, but I'd say if I do 3 visits during the day, 5 to 10 minutes each one, everybody feels like I spent a lot of time with them. If I sat.
Right.
But if I stood, they were like, yeah, he popped. Here's the other thing is, it's hard to think when you're standing up.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know how you're sitting there asking questions, then you're starting you're like, well, I don't have any more questions. I should leave, but I know I'm not done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know I have more to say here.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it just seems awkward. Like, I should just leave, and then you walk away.
And you walk out.
But like in a chair, you're just like, that's when you think, because you're like, okay, well, I should probably ask them about their medicines.
Right.
Yeah, medicines. Yeah.
What are your allergies? I'm curious.
Yeah,
there's a centering effect because we're used to doing our best thinking sitting, most of us anyways. Yeah.
And once like sometimes I'll go in, sit, and consultants will come in and stand. And that's the only time I get to see how really awkward it is.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just
yeah,
go,
of course.
Just go take anyone and then stand right over them and look down at them for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, so
in no other aspect of society do we actually normalize that.
No, it's so awkward.
Yeah.
Like once you know it. But I mean,
Right.
it's so much the rounding, the idea of walking around, and,
Right.
And it's so ingrained that you stand, you ask people questions, and then you walk away.
Right. So what is this? Let me see this chair.
Okay. So
and if you hand it to me, I can show it.
I will. It's a golf chair. 3
Ah,
pods.
Okay, let's show
So
this.
I did have a friend, David Tay. You remember David?
I know DT.
So he was the only guy who you tried to use the back as like and almost died and flipped over. But, so I do say David's a great friend of mine. He's the only guy but he tried to sit back on that.
Oh, you
like,
can't lean on this.
No,
You're going to die.
Because remember, Bill sits the other way.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
he straddles it with this thing.
And I always sit backwards and just use it like a tripod.
So how much does this thing cost?
$40 on Amazon.
And how heavy is it? It's light.
I'd say 10 pounds. But you just walk around with it.
Not even that.
People don't like it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
5 pounds. You don't notice it, but I'm so used to carrying it around now. I couldn't imagine.
But the other doctors were making fun of you at the community hospital, right?
The children picked on me.
The children, the physicians are bullies. And I imagine they were just like, what? You break your hip, JC?
No, well, they just sense weakness.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
You mean being nice?
No, if you're overweight, if you're anything in medicine,
That's true,
right?
That's true.
It's not that mean they just go over and jab. They jab.
That's true. So they just assume you're injured because you're walking around with this thing that looks like a cane.
They assume you have an arthritic knee.
Right.
And they are absolutely delighted with that.
They're delighted because misery loves misery.
Yes. So,
I love it.
Yeah. But that's the world. But it's interesting. The one group that loves the chair is the nurses.
Oh, why?
I don't know. They'll comment like, oh, you're the guy with the chair in the elevator, or you're the guy, One funny time was I walked out and the nurse was like, so I'm going to point you out because you're out of touch. That's a text. It keeps going.
So it keeps escalating if you don't answer?
It will never stop until I turn that phone over and look at it.
So you better do it.
But no, I don't care. But it's like, it will just keep going.
Oh my gosh.
And at night. So the one thing I did is I did turn it to like a pleasant European train.
I kind of like
the
it.
actual one is like
Right.
Harsh. It's harsh.
Oh, it's giving me PTSD.
Yeah, you know. But the one funny time with the sitting down is a nurse said, she goes, I didn't know you were friends with that patient. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, you were sitting down talking to her. And I was like, no.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, well, I've never seen any doc sit down and talk to a patient.
Wow.
So I just assumed you were friends.
Wow.
And I was like, wow.
That's great.
But
I mean, that just means that there's a culture shift that can happen.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like the only thing and I wouldn't push anything. I would challenge everybody, just look at the interaction when you're sitting and look at the interaction when you're standing. Yeah. That's the irritating sound.
It escalated to the irritating.
It gives me a couple European train, like the one I pick.
Right.
And now it's like, you haven't looked at it. And it will not. No, I want to irritate you.
No, it's great. I'm not irritated.
But the new world is texting in the hospital. Yeah. So not everybody's gotten there.
We had alphanumeric pages.
But this is all interaction now can be through texting with consultants, with PT, all the nursing. It's at Stanford, it's all can go.
Okay, so comparison before after, is the texting okay? Is it worse?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
But like anything, it has, like, you have to learn to manage it.
Right.
And I think the other thing we were talking about before is texting. Sometimes you can overreact to a text being harsh.
Right.
Where it's like they just, and so what I do now, because I'm giving you all the random, tips.
Yeah. The hospital hacks.
No matter how irritated I am, I always tap back, thanks, with an exclamation point. Thanks. And it actually makes me feel better. I don't know what does the other person, but you know how you're like, thanks, like.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling manifestation.
It's like, because I showed you one of the texts today.
Yeah.
That was a little tough.
It was tough. I would have probably lost my mind.
No problem.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I saw that.
And I always put the exclamation point in because they're free. So, it is funny. Because,
people, this is the guy who taught me kind of how to be a hospitalist. So that's why I didn't burn out as quickly as I might have. Is everything under control?
Oh, yeah. Totally fine.
I gotta say this. You, Nancy, and Bill were the founders. It's back to the European train sound.
No, but that was a thank you.
Oh, it was.
So that's very nice of them.
Right.
I didn't need that one. You know what I mean? That's where you have to
where you're like,
catch yourself.
Less is more.
No,
less
like
is more.
Right. but it is. It is interesting because that's the, it's, you've seen email chains like that. Well, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and then I was like, thank you. You're like, please, my inbox.
Yeah,
is a train wreck.
Yeah, but it's nice. So you just go.
Or the worst now is where people just like your text to acknowledge.
Yeah,
and then it shows up, but it dings you every time. And I'm like, I'd rather just.
You do realize I do that all the time. No, I'm just. That's the easiest.
I do it too because it's easy because then you don't have to write anything.
Then you're like,
I just don't like receiving them. I don't like receiving them. But you, Nancy, and Bill were the three founders, along with one other who since left, of our hospitalist program. Back when was this? 2000. 2000.
Labor Day. We started Labor Day 2000,
and I joined 2003. So I was one of the early group, but I was the second wave that you had recruited. You, Nancy, and Bill are still there.
100%.
22 years later. There are very few hospitalist jobs or realms that are that sustainable.
I credit the group because the group started off, and I don't know if you remember this, Barry Eisenberg, Susan Smith said, we have to make this a sustainable job.
I remember that.
We don't want, residents coming here working for a year.
Yeah. And leaving.
And then leaving and getting the next round.
Because that wasn't the ethos of the group. It was a group partnership.
The idea is when you became a partner, it was like being tenured at a.
That's right.
what they said. You're tenured, job for life. This is it. You're not going. I've had one job interview my whole life.
Yeah.
You know how it went? It was like yours. Do you want a job? Yeah. Okay. You got a job.
It's honestly.
But that was it. Like, that's how you got the job, right?
Yeah.
I called you up and I said, do you want a job?
Yeah.
Do you remember any interview?
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
So,
and I do remember this. When I made partner, it was like a massive affirmation of like everything. I went and bought a house. That's when I finally pulled the trigger on the house
tenure.
that I still live in.
The same idea, tenure.
Same thing. It's like tenure. It's like I finally reached stability. I'm accepted in a family. Like I have colleagues.
Margaret's not ashamed of you.
My wife Margaret is not ashamed. Well, she's still ashamed of me, but less so slightly.
Her
Maybe
family's not ashamed of you.
No, her family's always going to be ashamed of me, but that's just because I'm not a good Chinese boy. No, that's not true. But that was it was a sense of perceived progress too, which I think is important for people in their career. They want autonomy, they want tools, they want trust, they want a team, but they also want the sense that they're progressing in some way.
Yeah.
And in that group, there always was that.
So I think it is harder in other groups,
yeah,
right? Because things can change, like exterior forces can change,
right?
You know, contracts can go away,
right?
And there isn't that concept. And I think for everyone in this society, like, you know, you see nursing strikes, same problem, right? It's about stability.
That's right.
And how long, you know, am I going to be valued at this job? And, you know, that's everywhere.
Right. And, you know, for me in 2012, when I decided to go to Vegas and do that thing, it actually was a tough.
It was a big deal.
One of the toughest decisions. I remember.
And you didn't sell your house.
I didn't sell my house because part of me was like, but I'm a doctor at this clinic. Yeah. Like, how can I sell my house? I'd never be able to go back. Because you're out of the Bay Area.
That's because, to be fair, they would always have hired you back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of knew that.
Yeah. I think today you could just drive on over and
you've asked me to come back a couple of times.
I'm very comfortable, Zubin. They would hire you back. No.
Yeah,
problems.
not if they knew how out of practice I am. I mean, I round with the team and at UNLV, but
it's interesting.
They do the
Nothing
work.
changes. Like, a couple things change, but you pick them up right away.
Right.
Like lactated ringers versus.
So we're not using leeches for gout anymore?
We're back. Circle.
Circle.
Now we are using them again. Yes.
Are we bleeding people?
Yeah, like I said, you know, now we got scurvy. Yeah. Limes for everyone.
The scurvy's back.
Yeah, scurvy's back.
Oh man, and salmonella. Yeah.
But no, it's you would be, and that's another great part of our job, right? Because you know, people in tech, people other jobs. If you're out,
you're done.
While, you're done. You don't have the ability to walk away and walk back,
right?
Or go to a different geography,
right?
Of your own volition.
Of your own volition, right? Yeah. So, not because your license.
But these
was
are all.
these
are all like, you know, and imagine, and I want to say like how hard a primary care job is.
Yeah.
Right. Because imagine you grow this 2,000 and then you're like, well, I want to do something different.
You got to leave all those
got to leave all those people.
Yeah.
Like we just don't take a shift.
That's right. I mean, you know, who we're leaving is we're leaving the nurses and we're leaving our colleagues when we leave. Yeah. Which is
smaller
hard.
subset.
It's a smaller subset, but it's also very hard.
And you don't have to write notes to them. You just, you know.
That's true.
I didn't get a note from you.
No. I just sent you a text that made your thing bling a couple times. Yeah.
But again,
who'd you replace me with? I forget. It was a couple people, I think, because it took two to replace the Z-Dog. I don't remember. We probably can't say names because we don't want to out people. Can we? They don't care.
You can say who we worked with. Was it Walter?
Might have been
Mimi.
No, Mimi was with me. Yeah.
Walter.
I don't remember now. Nobody cared. I'm like, here we are talking about that. We don't know these people.
That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. I was only answering to be polite.
No, and I was only asking because I was curious.
Off the rails. I was trying to.
What else do you?
Bring it back.
What other hacks do you have, JC? Are those the big ones?
You know, that's interesting because I was trying to think of these on the drive over.
Right.
And then,
but I mean, they're like natural for you. You don't even.
Well, but that's what I want to hear from other people.
So in the comments.
That's what I want to hear. Like, what does everybody else do? You know, because, you know, when is the joke too far or when is it too familiar? Because what you want to do is look competent, compassionate, and friendly, you know, but not overly, not arrogant, you know, and like where
I think it's a good practice. You don't throw your colleagues or the nurses or anyone in the hospital under the bus.
Yeah.
You always listen to the patient. I love the idea of sitting down. the attitude idea that you're letting the patients know too, hey, you're with the best nurses, you're with this, so you're setting certain expectations.
And I think also the idea of coming to work like you can change how you do things. I don't wear a tie anymore.
You used to always tell me, wear a tie, wear a tie,
I know,
wear a
but
tie.
then it became a fomite thing.
That's right.
And only old people did.
That's right.
I'll be the old guy, so I got rid of the tie.
Yeah,
James Thomas, one of the people I work with, was like, look, it's no longer standard of care.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
One of the things I did change during COVID, I start calling my patients by their first name.
Oh.
I didn't used to. I was always
Mr.
like,
this,
Ms. Johnson,
Mrs. that.
and then I realized I got to get closer. And because it's so awkward to walk up and go, are you Bob, Robert, or, Bobby?
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to say Mr. Johnson. But actually now I think it's better to put the effort in, get the first name. And then when the conversations are going, you're referring to the person the way everybody else is.
Everybody else is.
Nobody else is calling him Mr. Johnson. You know what I mean? And it's awkward.
It's like when you see your patients at Costco or at the supermarket or something, you're like, this is a different person.
Yeah, but it's all about that, how to jump into the relationship quicker.
Quicker, yeah.
And it's awkward, but then now, and that's one of my bigger changes. That's just in the last year or two.
Okay. What else has COVID taught you? Because I remember you and I were in cahoots early on in COVID and you were feeding me info from the front lines.
Yeah.
Basically saying, I remember early on before anything even hit, you were like, hey, Z, this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah. I started wearing masks way early on.
Early on, yeah.
People would scream at me.
Yeah.
But
you're also not in the lowest risk age demographic anymore.
Yeah. So what did it teach us? I'm not sure. And what I think it taught us is everybody's had their own COVID experience.
Right.
So depending where you were,
that's right.
Look, our health department, Sarah Cody, shut us down a week earlier,
that's
10
right.
days.
We were the first in the country.
If we had waited 10 more days, it would have been horrific. Yeah. But we didn't.
In that early day, yeah.
Yeah. And we would have had what New York had.
Right. A big surge because we have a dense urban environment.
Yeah, we had a little blip.
Yeah.
I think everybody had and for us, the worst was Delta that July.
Yeah.
And that was, and I still have kind of patients that you're like still sad about.
Oh,
43-year-old, just all she did was go to a picnic.
Oh, got it.
Wasn't vaccinated, but went to a picnic, like did everything else right.
Right.
Some other family members got it.
Were you mostly seeing unvaccinated patients who were hospitalized?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Yeah. But back then you could kind of look at Delta and go, oh. But now once Omicron came, you're like the same situation, then they do okay.
Yeah.
Because they're like,
immunity's there. Yeah.
There's not a lot of data. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all more like word of mouth. What about you? I mean, my COVID experience was, not horrific.
Yeah. And I think the Bay Area did well for a few reasons. One is you can have a work from home culture.
Yeah.
Well, but except for and remember, I don't know what your patient demographic is, but ours was a little bit more middle class and up. We didn't really do a lot of Medicaid. I suspect those patients suffered a lot more. Yeah. Because again, like everything, they can't work from home. They are the front
Well, it's real interesting. As my brother pointed out, try wearing a mask all day.
Yeah.
And not just when you're like walking to and from, but like physically have a mask on.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm sick
done
of that.
Yeah, I'm done with this thing. Yeah.
It does, you're like, okay, it's all about, taking things upside down and looking the other way.
Right. Yeah.
2 COVID patients last night. So it's not, it's coming back.
No, there's this little surge right now that I think hopefully we're going to see less death, but it's definitely a real thing. Yeah. And again, I think we're going to see more vaccinated people ending up in hospital as immunity wanes a little bit and you get a little bit of that. But much still more so if you're unvaccinated.
Yeah. But for us, we'll see what the wave shows.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you're like, okay, I just talked to John Boggs, right?
Yeah.
And
our
like,
ID guy. Yeah.
Do I continue the Paxlovid with the remdesivir, Decadron in the, and he's like, okay, no data on that one.
Yeah. We don't know.
But it makes sense to keep it going. See if you can.
That's how we're practicing.
And I was like, well, because there's not going to be, okay, I want a clinical trial of Paxlovid, remdesivir, and Decadron in a patient with umpteen medical problems.
Right. And what to do if they have a recurrence after Paxlovid 5 days? Do you start another 5 days of Paxlovid?
Yeah, I mean,
this is coming up nationally.
Yeah.
Because it's happening.
Yeah. But
Who knows? We don't know. We don't have the data. As my friend Vinay says, we really had a chance to do a lot of science here, but it really hasn't been done.
Well, the studies are hard to do.
They're hard to do too, yeah.
Because those guys doing it, I really appreciate them.
Yeah.
Because you have to take something on and everybody's like, really? COVID?
Yeah.
You're working with COVID patients. You're trying to get, it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Even just doing the surveys, man. The CDC called me to do a survey, and just even reading off the script, she was having trouble. It's hard. And then you can imagine how difficult it is to get good data that isn't somehow shifted or biased. And and it's been politicized, the whole thing. And so, I don't know. In the end, us rich guys get richer and everybody else gets screwed.
I don't know. I think we all felt it like had kind of gone away.
Yeah.
And then and then personally, I'm a little bit lucky because I don't like eating in restaurants to begin with.
You don't like eating at restaurants? Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing. Yeah. It's like, what do you give up?
Yeah.
And I think for me, from the people I know, the patients I've seen who've got it, is mostly you're eating at a restaurant or some kind of party.
Sure, of course, gathering.
Some gathering.
You're vegan, right?
Vegetarian.
Or vegetarian.
So, but I would like to be a vegan, but I have to learn how to cook a lot better. You know what I mean?
Do you do it for ethical reasons or health reasons? Health.
It was mostly economic. I stopped eating meat in '88. And because we'll go back to our whole theme.
Yeah.
Making your life easier. Cooking meat takes too long. I was a student. So time was very important. Cost too much. Everything, it just makes no sense.
Right.
If you have limited resources and you want to eat better, you just go vegetarian.
Wow. I'm surprised. I would think meat would be accessible and you just get it pre-cooked or whatever.
It always takes longer. It's, and it's more expensive. And, so I just gave it up.
Is your whole family vegetarian?
No. My daughter's vegan. My wife is more vegetarian than not, but I'll eat meat. And then my son's just total carnivore.
Yeah.
And he's always been that way.
Yeah.
He just grew up as a
personality
meat
aptitude.
Meat eater.
Yeah.
In the midst of, it's like the Munsters, the meat eater in the midst of all the vegetarians. I don't know. He's like Eddie Munster or whatever, he's always eating meat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dude, it's
he's stopping. How about you guys?
We try to eat less meat, so we've cut out a lot of the red meat, but we still eat a lot of chicken and fish and occasionally pork. Because wife being Chinese, pork is really part of the whole part of the culture. And what I've done is I do the 1 meal a day thing. So that's what saves me money and time. Because during the day, if I had to go get lunch or do all that, and then I'm all groggy and tired and bloaty. Yeah.
I move that way too.
Yeah.
It's a trick. It's like anything. It takes a couple months.
At least, yeah.
And then once you do it for a couple of months,
it's golden.
Because what have you eaten? I've eaten nothing.
Nothing.
Today.
I've eaten nothing.
And I'm not hungry. But I would have told you before, the idea I'd go to 10:30 with no food
is insane.
Yeah.
Me too. Same thing.
It's
in fact, you're worried. You're planning your day. How am I going to eat? What am I going to do? And now it's I don't worry about it. I go have dinner. Yeah. With the family. And it becomes a family thing too, because that's when I see my family.
Yeah.
That's when my window is. These are beautiful hacks, man. I think they'll
thank
help
you
a lot
for letting me come by.
Dude,
it's funny because these aren't things I've thought of.
Right.
Mostly these are things I've just done. Right. And now it's kind of you get a little more introspective. Why am I telling the same joke over and over again?
Right.
Because I got to laugh.
Right. It's and it does cohese a relationship.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is the conversation we're having now is not a conversation we would have had when I was full-time hospital medicine at Stanford, because I would have had a veneer of cynicism. And I would have just been so JC, what's in this for me, man? What am I going to do? Whereas in reality, and that was the veneer you put on with your colleagues and all that. And maybe some of that's true too, because you're tired and all that. But then you go in the patient's room and that veneer is gone. You really want to help that patient.
That's real.
That's real.
Or that's where, that's training. That's where there's value to your training or there wasn't. You're good at your job or you're not.
Right.
And it really is, if you don't have that connection with the patient,
what's the point?
You're kind of useless here.
Yeah. That's why I think because they took our house staff away due to work hour rules, right? At some point, right before I left. And there were two things that happened for me. One was, that whole walking around the hospital, talking to people, being part of a team, that was lessened a lot because you didn't have the mentorship component where you could teach.
You weren't doing that.
You weren't doing that. But then the other thing that changed that I think was a little better is the relationship with the patient got really deep because now there isn't that other layer. it's just you and the patient. You're responsible. Yeah.
You're right. I definitely had closer relationships after that. After you weren't going as a group.
As you weren't going as a group, there was, well, the intern did this and then you do that. And it's all third hand. It's like, no, you're there.
And it's interesting. That's around when I started using the stool.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
That was I didn't use it before that. Now you think about it, I didn't even think about it that way. But if you think about 10, 12 years, that's when I started.
It's about when it started happening. But how would you do that with a big team of residents? Would they all have stools, or would you just sit and let them stand?
No idea.
I don't know. So we'd have to ask our academics if they ever.
Some of them have tried, and I think it's hard.
It is tough
because like one person has it and the rest don't. Although sometimes, like I said, when you're just sitting there, then you can catch interactions. Like all of a sudden you can be like fly on the wall, which is very unusual. Because usually you're the focus.
That's right.
Sometimes you can just be there.
Yeah.
And see things.
An attending I work with at UNLV does that. She always sits in the room when the whole team is standing. She will go in the room and sit down. And she'll watch and then afterwards she'll comment on the interactions and so on. Yeah.
I mean, I just tell people if you're in the hospital, you should have your own little chair.
Your own mobile chair.
Yeah, because it's just there's enough there's going to be situations where you're just going to want to sit down.
Why wouldn't they just put one of those outside of every room and then
people
you
don't
walk
use
in?
It. Washington tried to do it.
Did they?
Yeah, they have.
The hospital tried?
Yeah.
Oh, no one used them.
Yeah.
The culture hasn't shifted.
Well, it's I don't know.
But let's see what happens after the show, because a lot of people watch the show. Let's see what happens nationally. If that little chair gets, you know what? Invest in the company.
It's Drive.
You have an MBA too.
They already own everything.
Yeah. I mean, you're
too late.
You're business savvy. You're in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Do a thing. Yeah. John, thanks, man.
Okay. Hey, thank you for having me on. This is great.
This is fun.
I had a good time.
I did too. It's good to see you again.
Right.
Guys, share the show if you want to become a member of, this is how we pay for all this, like become a member of the supporter tribe, zdogmd.com/supporters. And we have these, I steward this place. It's not even a community. It's a group of people that are like-minded that pay like $5 a month. So it pays for all this.
Okay.
But it also allows for conversations with people who are like-minded, who come in and out of the community, and we talk about like, how do you fix healthcare? How do you have more sane kind of middle ground conversations with people? Those kind of things. How do we get less polarized, less manipulated by social media, that kind of thing. So if you like that, do that. If you don't, too bad. I have a good attitude because JC was here. I'm a white cloud by proxy, and we are out. Peace.